beginning of this video starts out with some very homophobic and transphobic quotes from Watchtower literature. If you don't want to endure that, just skip to the time code on the screen.
Carrie drew two mommies. She told me they're married to each other. My teacher says that all that matters is that people love each other and that they're happy.
Well, people have their own ideas about what is right and wrong.
But what matters is how Jehovah feels.
I was thinking, as an example, a homosexual. Now, this former homosexual comes back in the resurrection.
And he really thought.
And he was taught, and he came to believe that God accepted him with that lifestyle. But now he's going to learn about Jehovah's moral standards.
And he's going to learn
that Jehovah will not lower his standard to accommodate us. We have to come up to Jehovah's standard.
If an individual considers undergoing a sex change operation, basically to bring the appearance of the sex organs into line with what the individual emotionally and mentally feels himself or herself to be, that one should be advised to live in accord with the biological facts of the situation. Mutilating the sex organs, such as having the male organ surgically removed and an artificial female organ created, does not change the facts or make the person into the opposite sex. Someone desiring to be baptized who has already undergone a mutilating operation of this sort, a transsexual, would be expected to take his or her place in life according with what the individual biologically is, not in accord with what the person has been mutilated to appear to be. This may even require that a person leave a, quote, mate, to whom the person is, quote, married, since the mutilated one is actually, biologically, of the same sex as the, quote, mate. Okay, that's enough of that. So I've been wanting to do a video on Watchtower's stance on LGBTQ issues ever since I started my channel. The plan was just to give a simple overview of Watchtower's stance on homosexuality, and therefore queerness in general. They don't really differentiate between, like, bisexuality or trans people. They just kind of talk about homosexuality and assume that their readers and viewers and members will understand that just means anything not straight. So I was just going to give an overview of that. Watchtower says they are not homophobic, and I would show a bunch of quotes like the ones at the top of this video, showing that, yes, they are, and round we would go. But I quickly realized that anybody who was sincerely interested in Jehovah's Witnesses who wasn't already deeply homophobic would just immediately be put off by having to endure 20 minutes of homophobic content, and Jehovah's Witnesses watching the video would do what they always do and accuse me of persecuting them by accurately reading word for word what their publications say. And I also realized, like, I have to be the one to research and edit the video, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time trawling through queerphobic, triggering nonsense. No, today I have good news, neighbors, gabers. Good news being, as damaging as Watchtower's hateful comments towards the LGBTQ community are to its closeted members, I think that stance, that same homophobic stance, is actually slowly draining the religion of its last bit of goodwill, and will eventually send the religion into obscurity. You L's, you B's, you G's, T's, you filthy Q's are winning. And Watchtower and other evangelical religions like it are losing. Oh, it should be remarked that in the last few years, the United States, the only dadgum country I care about, religion has been on a steady decline in recent years. A 2019 Pew Research report states both Protestantism and Catholicism are experiencing losses of population share. Currently, 43% of U.S. adults identify with Protestantism, down from 51% in 2009. Meanwhile, all subsets of the religiously unaffiliated population have seen their numbers swell. Self-described atheists now account for 4% of U.S. adults, up modestly but significantly from 2% in 2009. Agnostics make up 5% of U.S. adults, up from 3% a decade ago. And 17% of Americans now describe their religion as nothing in particular, up from 12% in 2009. Members of non-Christian religions have also grown modestly as a share of the adult population. Jehovah's Witnesses reflect this global trend, with their numbers slowly stagnating in the late 2010s and 20-teens. culminating in a global decline in 2020. Even before the pandemic, which would understandably cause a decline in membership, the 2019 service report that Watchtower put out showed 44 countries of over 1 million members or more were in decline. And this included witness strongholds like Canada. On top of that, a 2014 study from Duke University and the University of Chicago showed that there had been an increase in churches that fully affirm LGBTQ+ members, increasing from 37% in 2006 to 48% in 2012. Meanwhile, data consistently shows that the majority of Americans openly support equal rights for LGBTQ people. In 2019, GLAAD and the Harris poll found that the majority of non-LGBTQ Americans, 80%, support equal rights for the LGBTQ community. This particular statistic has been consistent since 2016. Basically, what all of this means is that in Watchtower's home country, the only dadgum country I care about, the majority of people support the LGBTQ+ community, fewer and fewer people are joining religion in general, and the people who are joining religions have more options to join churches that, aren't horrible monster churches that suck. Put another way, witnesses who are known for their preaching, that core message that they're preaching is implicitly unappealing, if not reprehensible, to the majority of Americans. To get anecdotal, during the 2 seconds where I was interested in maybe joining another church after leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, I would click around on different websites to see local churches who supported LGBTQ+ people, and it was very easy to tell. It's very open on their website, they're very proud of this, and with non-affirming churches, it's also very easy to tell, because they're kind of sneaky about it. They would rarely come out and say that they didn't accept homosexuality on the front page, but it was always conspicuous by its absence. This is notable too, though, I think. Homophobic religions like Jehovah's Witnesses, they know that they can't be openly homophobic, at least not in public, if they want to appeal to people and at least try to draw them in, because most people will be put off by it. Even homophobic people don't want to be made to feel like they're homophobic. And Jehovah's Witnesses' official website, jw.org, pulls this same trick. The answer to the question, are Jehovah's Witnesses homophobic, is stated as no, even though the ensuing explanation makes it clear that the answer is actually yes. It's also telling that the question is, are Jehovah's Witnesses homophobic, and not, do Jehovah's Witnesses affirm LGBTQ+ individuals? Because the second one would more obviously make them look bad. To be clear, I used to be a part of this religion, and as somebody who was deeply afraid that I was a part of a homophobic cult, I was deeply comforted by this information on the website. When the leadership puts in writing that no, we're not homophobic, that feels like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Look, here, it officially decrees in black and white that I am not a homophobe, despite the definition of the word and all the things that we're forced to think, preach, and believe. Looking at some more recent Watchtower articles and videos, it seems like they're trying to back away from outright stating in their publications that they are anti-gay or anti-homosexual, anti-trans, anything like that. Instead, opting for dog whistles or oh my god. Or cat whistles, holy shit, from outright stating that they're against anything non-straight. Man, Bo has ruined every take. She jumps up in the window every time I say that, and it's driving me insane. A recent front page article featured on the website was entitled, "Is Anything Right or Wrong Anymore?" The ultimate boomer generalization. Things bad these days? ? But then when you click on the article, the title suddenly changes to, "Do the Bible's standards of right and wrong matter anymore?" If you look through the article, you'll notice it doesn't mention homosexuality once, but it does vaguely refer to the Bible's moral standards about sex and marriage. And obviously, you don't... Bo! And since they don't generally think that the straights are ruining the sanctity of God's sacred union, you can kind of gather what they mean. The May 2021 Study Watchtower also uses evasive language. Many clergymen are eager to accept as members of their congregation individuals who are prominent, wealthy, and viewed as wise by the world. Such clergy do this even though the morals and lifestyle of those new members often are out of harmony with God's standards. The same clergymen look with disdain on Jehovah's zealous, morally clean servants because they are not prominent by this world's standards. As Paul said, God shows those who are looked down on. Make no mistake, Watchtower's stance has not changed at all, but even these dogmatic cult leaders seem to be understanding that These days, they're having to use dog whistles instead of bullhorns. Because of all this, any new converts, by which I mean people who are brought in through the ministry as opposed to born-in members, will necessarily have to be queerphobic already, or at the very least are comfortable tolerating prejudice, which to me is more or less the same thing. If equality for GSRM people is important to you, you will be repulsed by this organization. So it's not an exaggeration to say that Watchtower's core demographic now is more or less homophobes. Which means, in my opinion, and this is obviously just a guess, the church pulling a Mormonism and becoming even slightly more tolerant towards homosexuality, pretty slim. The culture of the organization is such that if somebody has a problem with the organization's stance towards GSRM people, well, too bad. You suppress those feelings or you leave and find another organization. The leadership hierarchy rewards people who follow the rules absolutely, and one of those rules is tolerating, accepting, and perpetuating homophobia. That and the fact that when Watchtower is presented with a challenge, their first, second, and 12th reaction is to triple down and dig their heels in until they're dragged kicking and screaming, until they legally have to do something about it. So what does this mean for future generations of born-in Jehovah's Witnesses? You know, little kids whose parents are witnesses, they're brought up in the religion. What's up with these guys? I think for Watchtower, things are looking pretty dire. First of all, let me be clear, I don't think Jehovah's Witnesses are ever fully going away. There will not be a single incident that causes a mass exodus or great awakening, and we should stop using that term, by the way. Like most high control groups, I think that Watchtower will just be slowly emaciated through sheer apathy until it fades into obscurity. And I think that apathetic decline is really going to start to take shape with Gen Z. This is pure speculation on my part, but it's one that follows the data trends that we were talking about earlier in the video. And again, I am focusing on the United States because, as an American, global politics doesn't exist. Gen Z, broadly speaking, was old enough to grow up with constant, easy access to the internet, but were a little too old to have been grown up being brainwashed by these Caleb and Sophia cartoons. And this is a generation that grew up in a society that was generally accepting of gay people. This is in comparison to previous generations anyway. We still have a long way to go. And even if their local community or their religion was more conservative, they have probably access to an infinite amount of more accepting communities in the palm of their hand. This would have been a good time to hold up my phone, but I'm using it for notes over here. With communication and social interaction being as it is in the year of our Lord 2021, forming parasocial relationships is basically unavoidable, whether it's on YouTube, TikTok, Reddit community, whatever. And there are multiple high-profile studies that show that parasocial relationships have the same impact on your brain as forming an actual relationship with a person in your day-to-day life. The more contact you have on a day-to-day basis with a member of another race, sexuality, whatever, the more difficult it is to dismiss that person as an other. And this principle holds true through media contact and parasocial relationships. The monkey clockwork in our brain doesn't always know the difference between an interpersonal relationship we form in real life with a queer person and the relationship and connection we form with a queer video game character. So, it's going to be increasingly difficult, if not outright impossible, for young people to avoid having even a passing parasocial relationship with a queer person. And the more you see somebody as human, the harder it is to knock on that person's door and say, "Hey neighbor, I know that you're in a healthy relationship with your non-binary partner, but would you like to become celibate and get a divorce and join my religion that doesn't affirm who you are as a person?" At best, for Watchtower, this results in apathy. And this is no good, because for Watchtower to perpetuate itself, it needs zealous young cogs in the machine who want to perpetuate the religion. They need passionate, true believers. It only works when all the little cogs mesh together. They need the youth of today to grow up and have kids and pass on their zealous beliefs onto the next generation, etc. At worst for Watchtower, this is going to result in a lot of people leaving, or at the very least, not committing. And for Watchtower, that's functionally just as bad. Now, the serious and bad thing for us is that as Watchtower doubles down on its homophobic rhetoric, and isolates its members from an increasingly accepting society, this is likely to lead to more suicides and self-harm from its repressed LGBTQ+ members. I was originally going to get more specific on this, but I don't want to destroy and invite harm into the one safe place they feel they have. There are spaces that have been created by closeted or self-suppressing queer members of Jehovah's Witnesses to basically commiserate with one another and convince each other not to give in, not to become openly gay or trans, and to stay in the truth. It's bleak. It's really bleak. Again, I was going to get into more detail, but I don't want a bunch of XJWs storming in there and ruining the nice little safe haven that they've created for themselves, so we'll just leave it at that. Things are bleak, and they really suck for the closeted members of Jehovah's Witnesses. Hopefully, though, because resources for repressed GSRM people are increasingly being made more available and can be accessed discreetly online, these repressed members of Jehovah's Witnesses will realize that there are more options out there. There is another side. What they're feeling is not only normal, but healthy. In fact, it's very deeply unhealthy and unsafe to repress part of who they are. And this is why we need more representation in media and in public positions of office. Witnesses specifically use the term normalization as a bad thing, but it's good. That's my 420 69 IQ argument for you. If normalization of good things is good, actually. In my personal opinion, we as an XJW community do not emphasize this issue nearly enough. Gay and trans youth are already often in our society shunned by their friends and family when they come out of the closet. So obviously, when you have a community like Jehovah's Witnesses, where shunning is an ingrained practice to begin with, this issue is only exacerbated. LGBTQ members of Jehovah's Witnesses are literally in a life-threatening situation. The rate of suicide doubles for trans youth whose parents don't support them, and the statistics for gay and non-binary youth are similar. And I'm focusing on young people because the children are our future, but think of the mental anguish experienced by gay and trans witnesses who have had to suppress their identity for their entire lives and are in constant fear of being destroyed in Armageddon for a stray thought, for not being holy enough. And please, if you are in a position where you're experiencing these things and you're suppressing it, please reach out. There are so many good resources. I'm putting the suicide hotline number on the screen, and there's a lot of good resources for even like specifically repressed Jehovah's Witnesses. So those resources will be in the description, and please take care of yourself and reach out to me specifically too. If you want to email me, my email is in the description, and just I love you so much, and it just makes me so sad that you feel that you have to do this. And I understand, because I was in the same position, and it sucks, and you don't realize until you're out how much of your life you've lived in shame. And this is a non-scripted part of the video. I just really want you to know that you're loved, and that you are valued, and that your life matters, and that so many people love you who don't even know you yet. So just take care of yourself, please. And I'm wearing glasses because I'm reading my notes, so sorry if that was distracting. If you ask me, if you are an activist and you don't talk about this stuff, you should. It's important. And please signal boost this kind of stuff. It is absolutely important to clarify what is or isn't true. I mean, I love talking about obscure, silly doctrines on this channel. It's kind of why I started it to begin with. But it is way more important to talk about what is objectively and statistically harmful to real human beings. I know this is like hippie shit, but I find humanity and compassion to be a way more effective motivator than, you know, the umpteenth breakdown of why the Book of Machinations 420 is actually written by Godzooks in the year 1100 BC. Yet another dissertation on why the Book of Maccabees was actually written in the year -83 BC by Darth Malbus III. Euthanasians, Book of Jambalaya, Book of Henry, Song of Sauerman, Echinations 43:12, Salutation, Condolesians 23:19, Corinthians 1.5 Final Mix, Gamergations, Paraplegians 385 Days over 2. When Nebulham saw it, yet could not find the garment of Ansem's whore cousin, he fell to his knees and spat upon Jism, son of Squirtle, and God struck his hair lip and turned him into a thin dusting of stevia. Anyway, that was it. That was the video. That's it. That's the tweet. I hope that you found it helpful and uplifting and encouraging. And if you did, share it around. And, you know, if you have a friend who is kind of on the fence and, like, they're closeted, I maybe send it to them, because it might make them feel good and nice, and I don't know. Also, I'm bisexual, but that's none of your fucking business.